Hello and dobar dan from Croatia. My name is Klaudija Kordic, and thank you for inviting me to be a presenter at ESRE2021 Virtual Congress. When I first was invited to be a presenter and heard that the topic would be defining ethical landscape, the patient's view, I immediately knew that I would like to address the German case. But honestly, at that time, I did not know what kind of feelings from sad to angry the preparation phase for this presentation would cause for me personally. For me personally, as a woman having faced infertility, as a former patient in need for access to optimal fertility treatment. But first, let me declare that I have no commercial nor financial interests pertaining to the subject of this presentation or its content. My name is Klaudija. I'm 46 years old now. And my husband and myself had infertility issues for quite a long time. We are former infertility patients. Now we have 3 children born after IVF treatment. I'm a volunteer for more than 10 years now and an advocate for patients' rights in Croatia, but also on the European level in the field of infertility. I'm vice chair of the Croatian Patients Association RODA and Fertility Europe, trying from the bottom of my heart to give the patients a voice. As I was born and I grew up in Germany, where I lived until university, I really dare to say that both Germany and Croatia are my home countries. I do understand both countries well, not only the language, but also the people and the mentality. And although being very, very different, I like both countries alike. It was in July 2009 when the Croatian parliament passed a new law regulating medically assisted reproduction, becoming the most restrictive law in Europe. I was angry and hurt, furious and desperate, but decided quickly to stand up and to show civil resistance to the state and this law. I changed from an infertility patient to a volunteer and activist out of, yes, personal reasons, because this new law in Croatia had severe impact on treating infertility, on IVF treatments and the success rates. But this was not only for me and my husband. This was also for all the other patients in Croatia and for the thousands of future patients still to come. I was trying to figure out what happened with the law in Croatia and why it happened. This is when a small number of activists in Croatia started to extensively investigate European legal frameworks and laws governing IVF and reproductive medicine. This is when I first found out how outdated and how restrictive the German Embryonschutzgesetz was and still is. This is when we found out that even Switzerland was a rather hostile environment for people facing infertility. This is when we found out how different fertility treatments and access to treatments throughout European countries are treated. But what bothered me most was the awareness that my very liberal Germany, where I grew up in freedom and peace, that this very Germany is not treating infertility patients well, depriving many of those patients of their only and last chance to become parents. So let me show you where the beginnings of specialized laws governing medically assisted reproduction in the German-speaking countries. In 1991, it was Germany which, after a couple of years of heavy discussions, passed a law called Act on Embryo Protection. It was and still is a simple criminal law with no introductory part, almost no explanations nor definitions, purely stating criminal prohibitions, obviously addressing the specialists in these fields, giving them very clear and restrictive borders, not addressing the patients at all. According to this law, embryo freezing is forbidden. Only 3 oocytes are allowed to be fertilized at once. Egg donation explicitly forbidden, despite the fact that sperm donation was allowed. In 1992, Austria passed their law on assisted reproductive medicine, where there were less restrictions than in the German law, but MAR was allowed only for heterosexual couples, with while egg donation was completely forbidden. Switzerland followed with their law in 1998, also called Law on Assisted Reproductive Medicine, allowing explicitly only 3 oocytes to be fertilized at once, embryo freezing completely banned, again, egg donation forbidden. A short definition in both the Swiss law and the German law, by which a zygote is not an embryo, or an embryo is considered an embryo only after the fusion of the nuclei, made it possible in both countries to freeze the surplus fertilized eggs, but only within 24 hours after fertilization and with less success rates than with frozen blastocysts. Fortunately, both laws changed. In Austria, egg donation is meanwhile legal, whereas in Switzerland, not only 3, but now a maximum of 12 embryos are allowed to be produced at once. Embryo freezing is legalized. Even Germany underwent some changes, but only regarding PGD. But those changes are completely insufficient, leaving the German law the most restrictive law in Europe, besides perhaps Malta. But why was it so important at the end of the 80s to create a law called Embryo Protection Law? Who was the driving force in Germany at that time? What was their intention? To protect the embryo? The Evangelical Church in Germany issued their attitude to in vitro fertilization in their document called About the Dignity of the Beginning of Life. In 1985, stating, for example, physical and mental processes influence each other during the conception and birth of a child. In a significant number of cases, male or female infertility has psychological causes. The psychological causes and extracorporeal fertilization are not fixed, just technically bypassed. The Evangelical Church in another document advises against IVF, but at the end, the Church leaves it up to the conscience of the individual to decide. On the other hand, the Catholic Church is more explicit in this matter. Their views can be seen from the Donum Vitae document, which was issued in 1985 by later Pope Joseph Ratzinger. Any kind of procreation outside the bedroom was not allowed and not tolerated by the Roman Catholic Church. Any kind of medical help necessary to make pregnancy happen was neglected. But one cannot but ask, who was there and who is there to protect the patients with such a law? Who is there to secure and offer them the best available treatment? This German Embryonschutzgesetz is full of bans and restrictions on the first page, already stating, whosoever undertakes to fertilize more eggs from a woman than may be transferred to her within one cycle shall be punished with up to 3 years imprisonment or a fine. It also states that whosoever undertakes within one treatment cycle to transfer more than 3 embryos to a woman shall be punished with up to 3 years imprisonment or a fine. The combination of those two prohibitions led to the strict so-called rule of 3. It imposed that only a maximum of 3 oocytes may be fertilized, further cultured, and afterwards transferred. Consequently, Germany has witnessed lower success rates of IVF, but also multiple pregnancy rates, which today are still higher than in many other developed countries in Europe with a modern and patient-friendly IVF law. Nowadays, it is known that not every fertilized oocyte has full potential to become a valid embryo. On the very contrary, actually, only a small number of eggs can develop into a human being. And this is not a matter of IVF, but a matter of human nature. Even in spontaneous cycles, this is the case. And exactly this knowledge paved the way to a strategy called the German Compromise, and was developed by German reproductive and legal specialists. It is a compromise allowing as many fertilized oocytes which can be cultivated as necessary to achieve exactly the number of embryos planned to be transferred, but a maximum of 3. Meanwhile, a number of criminal procedures were terminated and rejected by public prosecutors, with that offering legal grounds for practically suspending the strict rule of fertilizing only 3 oocytes. German fertility clinics use the German Compromise nowadays to perform MAR. But is this really light at the end of the tunnel? Even as a patient, I say strongly no. According to Jochen Taupitz, a German legal expert specialized in medical law and medical ethics, German patients are still not treated according to best medical care or to best medical knowledge in the field of infertility, often transferring in Germany still 2 to 3 embryos and not having elective single embryo transfer legalized. Egg donation was completely forbidden, with the prohibitions saying it is forbidden to fertilize artificially an egg cell for any other purpose other than bringing about a pregnancy in the woman from whom the egg cell was collected. The intention for this was to avoid the so-called split motherhood for the sake of the children, trying to show the big difference between social and genetic mother. Although many other countries and scientific studies have proven that the children born from donor conception, either sperm or egg donation, do not have any disadvantages by being from donor conception. And the discrimination here between men and women is very obvious, isn't it? As sperm donation in Germany is allowed and performed. Patients travel abroad to have egg donation, mostly go for anonymous donation, and by that, the fundamental right to know your genetic origin is simply overruled. And two last things, my dearest Germany. Bans automatically mean a feeling of guilt for those patients and shame for people affected, letting them know and think that they might have just doing something wrong, but they don't. And bans often open the market space for at least very gray markets. We cannot talk about the patient's rights and ethics and avoiding to talk about reimbursement. At the moment, in Germany, a maximum of 8 IUI treatments without stimulation, maximum 3 IUI treatments with hormonal stimulations are reimbursed, and up to 3 IVF or ICSI treatments. Also, medication for treatment is reimbursed. One would say that is more than a good situation and much better than in other countries, but it's not. First, only 50% of all the costs are reimbursed. And this only if it is a married and a heterosexual couple. And only if the female age is higher than 25 and lower than 40 years, and the male age lower than 50 years. And only valid for homologous fertility treatments. So the costs patients in Germany have to take themselves are between 1,500 and 1,800 euro. Effective from January 2004, Germany decided to stop fully reimbursed IVF treatment and to offer only 50% of the cost for patients. I can only imagine what this meant for a high number of people facing infertility at that time and trying to have a child. But let me show you what it meant in numbers. From IVF, ICSI or cryo treatments performed in 2003, almost 19,000 children are born. The year when Germany stopped financing IVF treatments and offering only 50% of the costs reimbursed, the number of children born from treatments in this year dropped to 10,500, which is a decline of 45%. The number of children born was halved in 1 year. It took Germany, as you can see here, another 10 years to recover somehow. 10 years later, it was again almost 18,000 children born after IVF treatment. How many couples were deprived from their right to try to have a child, ladies and gentlemen? Is this my Germany? The Germany I loved so much? No, this is a Germany I'm honestly ashamed for. And now, let us see what ethic means from the Collins English Dictionary. It's a social, religious, or civil code of behavior considered correct. But what if this so-called and 30-year-old ethical code is, on the other hand, punishing people in need for medical help to get pregnant? This cannot be ethics. My only conclusion, here we stand, 30 years after the commencement of the German Embryonschutzgesetz, a law which is protecting the embryo in the first place and not protecting the patients in need for medical support. The only conclusion could be to change the law, not by a small bit, not only introducing the possibility of egg donation, but our duty is to help to introduce a new modern law which will allow the people in Germany facing infertility to have equal chances like in other countries, allowing the doctors and the embryologists in Germany to use evidence-based medicine, modern means, technologies, and procedure to secure successful and secure treatment of infertility. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a picture of my family. Two from those 3 children would not have ever been born if I stayed in Germany. Thank you very much. I'm open for questions and comments and inquiries.